Check. I think mine works.
Mine
More
also
input gain.
works.
Okay, thank you very much. So we were waiting for someone named Dylan Hunziker to show up and moderate this, but it seems like he hasn't showed up. Dylan, if you're here, you can take my spot. If not, I will just do this. The conversation is about scaling Bitcoin with L2s and the future of L2s. And we have Alisia and we also have Liam. Let's talk about L2s. Like, why are we scaling with L2s and why not just, make changes to the base layer?
If only it were that easy. Yeah, there's lots of things that you can't do on Bitcoin that I think we should be able to do, like private transactions, have more scalability, maybe DeFi stuff. And currently the only way to do that with Bitcoin in a trust minimized way is with L2s.
I would also say there's a performance difference, right? So with a lot of these L2s, they offer much faster block times and cheaper transaction fees. So if you want that meaningful scale activity, I think you would need some sort of a second layer on Bitcoin. And also, the reason why a lot of L2s in Bitcoin have popped up, right, is because a lot of them are leveraging the EVM. We're at ETHDenver, right? So we have to talk about that a little bit. So EVM, you can argue, is maybe not, the VM of choice for a lot of Bitcoiners, but it's the most scale one. It has an entire ecosystem, the most number of devs, tooling, smart contracts, of course, right? And so I think that's also really important that we have this entire ecosystem that we can plug into through an L2.
That's beautiful, but in Bitcoin culture, when people talk about an L2, they usually think about the Lightning Network, sometimes Liquid, but that's not really an L2. It's more like a federation, like a layer 1.5 or something. So how come there's so much talk about bringing the EVM to Bitcoin, and there's not much talk about improving, or not much capital for improving Lightning?
So I think, everybody, there are lots of projects using it, so I'm sure they all have their own justifications, but the EVM has the most users, the most audited, well-tested code, and it's the easiest to deploy a lot of existing things on. I think that's the primary motivation for using the EVM. Why not improving Lightning? I think that Lightning is not capable of doing some of the things that people want to do with L2s. So, for example, like a lending pool. At least I don't know how you would do that with Lightning. It's like kind of a many-to-many interaction, whereas Lightning has these like peer-to-peer connections, and it's also limited by what you can do on L1 to settle disputes in Lightning channels. So in that way, you're limited by the functionality of Bitcoin. Whereas the nice thing about rollups and by extension L2s, at least the ones that I work on, is we reduce the whole problem of the verification of the L2 to verification of a zero-knowledge proof, which kind of reduces the scope of changes you would want to L1 and what you need to do. And I don't think there's a way to do that with Lightning.
I think there's also this piece of vulnerability, right? So if you think about a lot of the programmability that is occurring on Liquid or Stacks or some of these other Bitcoin layers that are using different VMs, a lot of these protocols get hacked because they actually don't have that scale smart contract environment. So I think there's definitely a question of vulnerability. And I think the other one that we haven't really spoken about as much is UX, honestly. So EVM, again, just being the most scale virtual machine, you can plug into Privy and have email authentication, login, right? Just like there's an entire universe that's built using that as a core tech stack, and it's just a lot easier to onboard a lot more users.
Yeah, so it's relatively popular nowadays to try to bring the EVM to Bitcoin. But the question is, why should the average user give up on Ethereum or Solana or whatever it is that they're using and switch to a Bitcoin layer?
They shouldn't. So I actually don't think there is that much additionality there. So if you're using Ethereum, and you're using WBTC on Ethereum, you should continue using WBTC on Ethereum. You're assuming the trust assumptions of WBTC as well as the bridging risk of Ethereum, right? So if you're comfortable with those trust assumptions, you should continue. I think the opportunity here is really to open up the market to a new set of users, which in our opinion is like the silent majority of Bitcoiners, basically like off-chain Bitcoiners, maybe like your mom or your dad who maybe DCA into Bitcoin through the centralized exchange. That is also Bitcoin and that is also Bitcoiners. And I feel like we don't talk about them enough, and they also want financial products that cater to their needs. And they're not degenning on Ethereum right now. So I think there's a difference in user segmentation between what is relevant for a Bitcoin layer versus what is relevant for any of the plethora of blockchains that we see in the space right now.
I think that I agree that it remains to be seen, like, because a lot of this stuff is very new, how much like latent Bitcoiner interest will be unlocked. I think it is valuable to increase the security of the bridge over wrap Bitcoin, and like the structure of BitVM bridges is maybe more feasible for like big custodians to use because they can participate more easily. And I kind of, yeah.
Okay. But it is a very much practical problem because Citrea launched like a month ago. And so far, we haven't seen the reactions that we expected. I don't think that they have a lot of users. And I think this is a cultural problem in Bitcoin. It's very hard to get the people who have been accustomed to the HODL meme and have learned how to use Lightning to try something else which doesn't come from the same council of high priests who delivered to them the previous upgrades. So what do you think is a good approach to get people to escape this mindset where they only use the vetted technology and something that is exotic and comes from Ethereum or Zcash or other networks is haram or something?
I'm not sure. I think that there's been a long period of, I'll say for snark research, for example, like people were very interested in using snarks on Bitcoin a very long time ago. Zcash comes out of an effort to add private transactions to Bitcoin via snarks. Starkware, Eli Ben-Sasson talked about scaling Bitcoin with snarks over 2013. Unfortunately, because it wasn't possible, and then later for technical reasons, and then later for political reasons, a lot of these people left. But I still think a lot of them would be interested in coming back. So I think that the Overton window could shift, and maybe we can make it happen. I'm not sure.
I respectfully disagree. I don't think those users are worth going after, right? I think they're very puritanical about the way that they perceive Bitcoin and how to use Bitcoin. I mean, we even see this in the Bitcoin technical community of like the ossifiers versus the ones who are in favor of like more upgradability. It's almost like a religion. And so in my few years of like in my decade in Bitcoin, I feel like it's tough to get people to change their religious beliefs about Bitcoin. So I think you mentioned, some Bitcoin L2s that may not have had as much traction or users. I think again, it fundamentally comes down to not maybe understanding the target user or the target segment. Because a Lightning user who clearly cares about self-custody, cares about permissionlessness, they may not accept the trust assumptions of a roll-up or an L2, right? And so I think there is a fundamental misalignment between a lot of these new blockchains and their trust assumptions and the users that they were claiming to serve, and maybe some misalignment in terms of target user. And that's why I keep coming back to, we really need to think about who and what is a Bitcoiner and like how that's shifting over the past like post-ETF, because a Bitcoiner 10 years ago is very different to a Bitcoiner today, and they want different things and they care about different things. At Botanics, a key learning has been, like, we're massive decentralization maxis, that's our entire ethos to building on Bitcoin. And when we talk to some of these, normie Bitcoiners, they don't even understand the base value proposition of Bitcoin or decentralization or why that's so relevant. And so it's been really interesting building a product that speaks to these people, and it comes down to utility, right? Like giving them what they want, which boils down to simple financial primitives that run on Bitcoin.
I think that we need to do a better job of communicating to normie Bitcoin users that the fact that you can't do things with Bitcoin in a decentralized way has led to the growth of centralized intermediaries who pose an existential risk to the protocol. We take for granted things like self-custody being legal, but it's pretty weird, and a lot of governments would really like to get rid of it. And I think that maybe if people understood that it was necessary to either change Bitcoin or via some L2 enable these things in a more trust minimized way. Bitcoin could die if everybody held their Bitcoin in ETFs and then they just passed a law that said you can only trade it with a whitelist. This is definitely something that could happen, and if we don't do something, I'm worried it will.
But how do you get someone to care?
I mean, who are we trying to convince?
Basically the new wave of people who are buying Bitcoin, because I mean, Bitcoin, the OG Bitcoin whales are actually selling the cycle, right? So the profile of an average Bitcoiner has fundamentally changed. They don't understand these principles. So how do you get them to care?
I think that, so I want to connect people's greed with the politics that I want to see in Bitcoin. So I want to convince people that the price will go down if they kill the ethos of Bitcoin.
I agree. I think that's the best way to get them. Basically, what I've noticed hits the best is if you care about your bags, if you care about the price of Bitcoin, you should care about adoption, because that is a very big driver in terms of the price of Bitcoin.
I think a lot of people in crypto are a bit uncomfortable with reckoning with the fundamentally very political nature of what we do, and wielding political power to change things, right? Instead of just accommodating the world as it is, try to make it different. And I think self-custody is a really good example of this. It's a huge departure from the traditional financial system. All the governments everywhere in the world banned bearer assets, and then Bitcoin came into existence, and everybody just sort of treats it as though it's fine now, but it's not a law of nature.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let me say something very controversial and see how you react to it. The ETF that we got in Bitcoin is a de facto scaling layer, because institutions can transact Bitcoin without touching the base layer with zero fees. They just write a piece of paper and they pass it on to each other. And you can also argue that there is some privacy benefit from this, because the transactions don't hit the blockchain. And it can take a long time until the media finds out about a certain transaction that happened. So would you argue that the ETF is the de facto layer 2 that provides scalability and privacy?
I think it's not a crazy take. It's not that different from a multi-sig bridge to a sidechain that has one operator or something.
I agree and disagree. I agree in terms of definitionally, there is utility being created on these ETFs in a centralized off-chain way. I just think we're losing sight of how Bitcoin, the protocol, works, right? And it's to your point earlier about an existential threat, if we submit to that, I think we'll have lost, right? And so I think it is, anyone who's in this room obviously cares about decentralization, and I think the ETFs do pose a threat to all of that, and the onus is on us to fix it. But again, it comes down to trust assumptions and what people are willing and not to accept. If you're willing to accept a centralized ETF transacting on your behalf, then yeah, maybe that is your L2.
Yeah, we're sort of running out of time because we started later. So I'm going to try to negotiate with Robin if he can give us 5 minutes from his presentation. Are you fine with that, Robin? Okay. You're going to have 15 minutes instead of 20. Just so you know, you can run. I'll have to ask spicy questions. The first spicy one is kind of a shilly one, because I want you guys to talk about the projects that you're working on. Say something nice and also something bad that you wish was better about the L2 that you're working on.
Sure. So I'm working on a new project called Ideal with Robin and Yingtang, and we're trying to do the next generation of BitVM style bridges. We have a new garbling scheme that's significantly better than the state of the art prior to that. And that enables bridges that are more permissionless, can have more operators, are just all around better. So I guess two downsides. One is that it has a slightly higher on-chain cost, which people like to needle me about. And the other one is that BitVM is kind of clunky and frustrating to use, and it would just be much, much better if we could throw all of this away and activate opcat or a soft fork of some kind to make all of this work obsolete that I've been doing for the last few years and just do it the right way. But, you know.
You stole my talking point. Yeah, so I'm building Botanics. We're a blockchain that's based on Bitcoin. So I guess a Bitcoin L2, which is the name of the session. We went live in July of last year. And actually, the really interesting thing about us, aside from the fact that we're built on Bitcoin, Bitcoin is the gas token settlement layer, no token, no points, no other funny business, is that we actually have Bitcoin yield endemic to the chain's mechanics. So basically, every time you transact on Botanics in Bitcoin, 50% of all of those gas fees are redistributed as yield back to stakers. So that is our take on native Bitcoin yield without any sort of other tokens involved. And yeah, check us out if you want to earn passive yield on your Bitcoin or borrow against your Bitcoin at the lowest borrowing rates in the entire world. So yeah, that's a bit about us. A bad thing, actually, it was he kind of took it, but I was like, yeah, our tech, which is called the Spider Chain, would be infinitely superior if we are to enable like a soft fork like opcat, which actually one of our former devs helped champion. And so that is a technological constraint. However, our approach to decentralization is obviously an expanding federation of multisigs, which is what we're working on right now. Another downside, I love this question. I'm trying to think. No, honestly, I think what's been really invigorating to see is like there is adoption happening. Like we actually have retail users who are using our yield product, who are using our borrowing products. And so there is that product market fit you're already seeing for Bitcoin layers, but you need to be hyper surgical about utility. So I think one thing we've learned as a chain over the past however many months is the importance of like deprecating products that aren't working in favor of products that are.
Yeah, final question for the two of you. The topic is Bitcoin layer 2s, and you're representing just the ones that you're working on. And I want to ask you if there are any other layer 2s that you like, which exist out there. You're not working on them, you have no financial incentive to promote them, but you still like them.
Oh, I don't know. I don't want to upset anybody by omission, but yeah. Like on Bitcoin or just in general?
I'll let you talk about L2s in general if you want.
No, I mean, I think that there aren't very many on Bitcoin. I think, I don't know, Lightning is cool. I don't know. Honestly, I don't really use that many Bitcoin L2s, and I'm not probably the right person to answer this.
The political answer is all of them are amazing. You're doing fabulous, sweetie. But I would say honestly, I think anyone who's trying to push the envelope in terms of like Bitcoin tech, like you guys, Alpin, Citria, all of these folks, like obviously pushing the bar forward for Bitcoin. So I think they're all fantastic. BitLayer is doing some BitVM stuff. Bob, so all of these folks I think are doing great things in Bitcoin. We love all of them.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you, Robin, for letting us stay for 5 extra minutes.
Thank you.
And we're going to give the floor to Robin Linus, the main eventer of this session.